What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my fantasy football starts and sits for NFL Week 16.
Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over each position and give you my fantasy football starts and sits for NFL this week. This should help you decide who you want to start in your season-long fantasy football leagues. And we will show you how to use the Draft Dashboard tools to dominate your season-long fantasy leagues. You can find waiver wire targets, get player point projections, find the best positional matchups to see who is projected to score the most fantasy points this week. These tools will help you decide what players to start in your fantasy football leagues. We have it all right here, so let's get into it. Okay guys, NFL Week 16. Let's take a look at the quarterback position. I'm going to start Baker Mayfield from the Cleveland Browns playing the New York Jets, who have the second worst defense overall, and they give up the second most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield has averaged 17.2 fantasy points per game on the season, but take a look at his last three games. He scored 21, 34, and 34 fantasy points in his last three games, projected at 17.4 fantasy points here in Week 16. So the Jets won their first game last week versus the Rams. Looks like they still got some fight in them. And the Cleveland Browns are only favored by 10 points here. So Baker Mayfield's going to have to throw the ball and put up some points in this one. He's got a fantastic matchup. So I'm going to start Baker Mayfield here versus the New York Jets. Okay, who are we going to sit at the quarterback position? I'm going to sit Philip Rivers from the Indianapolis Colts playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing quarterbacks. Philip Rivers has averaged 16.9 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 17, 18, and 19 fantasy points in the last three games, projected at 18.7 fantasy points here in Week 16. But now he's got a tough matchup versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are going to be hungry after that loss to the Bengals. So I'm going to sit Philip Rivers here versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. I'm going to start Le'Veon Bell from the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Atlanta Falcons, who have the sixth worst defense overall. And although they've been pretty good versus opposing running backs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be out for the rest of the season. So that means Le'Veon Bell is going to be the bell cow running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. His rush attempts are going to go up. He got 15 rush attempts and one pass target and scored 15 fantasy points last week. So expect an increased volume for Le'Veon Bell. And Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. 53 points scored in this game, with the Kansas City Chiefs favored by 10.5. So it should be a running game script. You may be able to expect 20 carries from Le'Veon Bell this week. So I'm going to start Le'Veon Bell here versus the Atlanta Falcons. Okay, who are we going to sit at the running back position? If you have better options on your roster at running back, I'm going to sit Chris Carson from the Seattle Seahawks playing the LA Rams, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing running backs. Now, Chris Carson has averaged 16.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 11.4 rush attempts per game and 4.1 pass targets per game. He got 15 rush attempts and 3 pass targets last week, only managed to put up 9 fantasy points. He's losing a little bit of work to Carlos Hyde, and although he is projected at 14.5 fantasy points here in Week 16, this is a tough matchup, and I only suggest sitting Chris Carson if you have a comparable running back on your roster if you're trying to decide between a guy like Chris Carson and David Johnson or Miles Sanders or Austin Eckler, I'm going to sit Chris Carson here versus the LA Rams.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. MLB is still going. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks.
Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. I'm going to start Jarvis Landry from the Cleveland Browns playing the New York Jets, who have the second worst defense overall, and they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Jarvis Landry has averaged 12.5 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.8 pass targets per game. He scored 19, 12, and 20 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 8, 9, and 10 pass targets. He's projected at 13.9 fantasy points here in Week 16. So great matchup for Jarvis Landry. Like I said with Baker Mayfield, it looks like the Jets still have some fight left in them. So I'm going to expect them to put up points and force the Cleveland Browns to score some touchdowns here. And the Jets are good versus the run. So I think Jarvis Landry gets plenty of work in this one. He's been on fire. So I'm going to start Jarvis Landry here versus the New York Jets. Okay, who are we going to sit at the wide receiver position? I'm going to sit DJ Chark from the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Chicago Bears, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they're pretty good versus opposing wide receivers. DJ Chark has averaged 11.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7.3 pass targets per game. But he's only scored 9, 4, and 6 fantasy points in the last 3 games, although he's projected at 11.7 fantasy points here in Week 16. I think there's too many mouths to feed at the wide receiver position, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 46.5 points scored in this game, with the Jacksonville Jaguars trailing by 7.5. I just can't trust DJ Chark, especially in a bad matchup versus a good Chicago Bears defense. So I'm going to sit DJ Chark here versus the Chicago Bears. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. I'm going to start Noah Fant from the Denver Broncos playing the LA Chargers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Noah Fant has averaged 9.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6 pass targets per game. He scored 21 fantasy points last week off of 11 pass targets. He's projected at 9.6 fantasy points here in Week 16. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 50 points scored in this game, with the Denver Broncos trailing by 3.5. So you got a great tight end matchup, a high-scoring game, and a passing game script. So I'm going to start Noah Fant here versus the LA Chargers. Okay, who are we going to sit at the tight end position? I'm going to sit Cole Kmet from the Chicago Bears playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, although the Jacksonville Jaguars have the worst defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends, the matchup is interesting, but the Cole Kmet experience is over. With Jimmy Graham back in the mix, Cole Kmet only got 2 pass targets and scored 3 fantasy points last week. He had previously scored 8 and 15 fantasy points off of 7 pass targets in each of those games, but I think the Cole Kmet train has come to a stop. So you may have been streaming this player, and even though he's got a juicy matchup here in Week 16, I'm going to sit Cole Kmet here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again and good luck.